creating an action and running a batch using Adobe Photoshop CS6. Begin at your Start menu and navigate to All Programs. Expand your Adobe Master Collection CS6 and select Photoshop. Photoshop will open up, and for this example we're going to use a set of maps as our file set that we're going to run the action on. And so I'll go ahead and open a recent file that I've been working on. And while that opens up, the toolbars in a normal workspace, you can of course adjust your workspace in Photoshop to be arranged any way you like, but the default has all of your different tool windows on the right hand side. And so if actions aren't over here already, you're just going to go to Window and put the check by Actions, and that'll pull up both your history and your actions toolbar. And so we can open up to see default actions. Photoshop has a number of actions that it has built in, and each one of these actions are all housed under the folder default action. So when we want to create a new action, we have to do basically the same thing, or we can add our action to default actions. But if you want to have proper organization, you'll actually create a folder first. We'll just call it downsample, and then inside that folder, you can see that it's highlighted. We'll now create our new action, and this one we'll just call SSTJ. And so once I hit record, you'll notice that the red light turns on at the bottom there, and that lets us know that everything we do from this point forward will be included in the action that will be repeated on all the files in our batch that's to come. And so just some basic things I'm going to run just to show you here. We'll sharpen the file. We'll run a Smart Sharpen, and Photoshop holds my default settings. Generally, you don't want to go above 2 pixels in your radius when you're doing a Smart Sharpen, and just kind of a neat function. You can remove motion blur, and so if I change the angle on this, you can see in the preview that it does put a shift into how it's going to change the file. But for this map, we're going to just remove Gaussian blur, and so I'll say OK to those parameters. And the next thing I want to do is downsample, change my image size. So I go into image size, and I'm going to change my resolution from 500 to 250. And of course I want to scale my styles and constrain proportions, but I'm going to change my algorithm to best for reduction, and just add a little bit more sharpness to this file and improve it as we downsample. So I'll say OK there. And the next thing that I want to do is place a visual watermark on all of my sheets. And so to do that, I'm going to zoom in so that I have a nice view window here, and then I'm going to say place and navigate to the watermark that I want to stamp. So I'll say place there, and you'll see when you hover over the center, you have the option to move the center point of the file that you're placing, and also you can, as you know, change the shape and style of it. But I like the size of it, so I'm going to just go ahead and drag it up to the location that I'd like it to stamp, and just kind of adjust using my arrow keys to get it into a place that I think it'll be a good location on all the other sheets I have to come, so that it doesn't overprint any of the map text. And so I'll hit enter to place my watermark, and then I'll go up to layer and flatten the image so that I have one contiguous raster file. And you'll notice in the right here that all of the different steps that I've done, it can expand and show all the different parameters that I had it set at. So that's just a nice little feature. So the last thing I want to do is save this file, but I have some specifications for saving this file that bring up an interesting point. So I'm going to actually show you, jump ahead just a second to automate batch to what this graphical user interface looks like. And you have the option to set your destination to a folder, and then it does give you this nice feature where you can add extensions or change your file name depending on what you want to do. But what it doesn't give you are the option to save multiple versions of the file as a with different file types, and it doesn't give you the option for compression. So when we run it, we'll actually set it to none, and that means that I'm going to build my save outs right into my action. So I'll go ahead and say File Save As, and this first file I want in my batch output to have its same name, and I want it to be saved as a TIFF, so I'll just say Save. And here's my lovely option for compression, so I get my LZW there, and I leave my pixel order as interleaved and byte order as IBM. And then I want another copy, but this time I want it to be a JPEG, and so I'll change my file type and say Save, and since this is, I want to be as compressed as possible, I'm actually going to bump my resolution down to low and say OK there as well. And so the last and probably most important step in a batch, if you're not going to use that folder destination in the output, you want to make sure that you close your file, because otherwise when you run your batch you'll have, say you run 64 files, you'll have 64 open files left waiting for you. That, I mean, in the scheme of things isn't a big deal, but you might as well just have a complete action. So now that my action is built, I'm going to come down to the bottom and say Stop. And I always find that it's a good idea to save your action, because in the event that Photoshop goes through a forced close for some reason, there are times when it will lose unsaved actions. And so the only way to save an action is to actually go to this drop-down menu in your toolbar, and you can see there's actually a variety of things that are housed in this little drop-down menu that a lot of people don't know is hidden up there. And I actually have to have the folder highlighted if I want Save Actions to be highlighted, and so I already have an actions folder set up, and I'm just going to save it as downsamp, and so now it's ready to go. So the first thing I want to do, since I used a file in the batch that I am going to have in my inputs, this is kind of a file management thing, I'm going to go ahead and delete those two files out of there, so that there's no issues with overwriting, and I know that everything will go into that batch folder just fine. And so then we're going to go basically where we did before and go Automate Batch, and this time we're actually going to run our batch. So from our play set, we're going to select downsample, and the only action we have in the downsampled folder is SSTJ, but you can see from default actions that you could house a variety of actions inside a folder. But we're going to use that one, and we want to include us. Well, I guess we don't want to include all subfolders in this, but you do have that option. But we're going to suppress our file open dialogues and our color profile warnings, so that way it doesn't stop the action for anything. It runs smoothly. And then, like we mentioned before, our destination is going to be none because we built our saves right into the action. And the same thing with errors. I'm going to say write errors to file, and just drop this quickly. Call it Photoshop error log. And so that way, if there is a problem, it'll write it to that text file as opposed to truncating your batch. And this is really relevant if you're running, hundreds of files at a time, which Photoshop will do. I've run batches overnight, multiple hours on end, and processed thousands of files at a time. So that error log's a nice feature, so then you come in the next day or whatever and you can see where the errors were and fix those specific files, but it doesn't truncate your whole batch just because it came across one error. So once you have your action and your save as set, you want to make sure that you choose your source folder, and I'm going to go into Documents, and I have a folder set up called Batch, and I'm going to say OK on that. And then I will just hit OK and it'll run the action. And so we can watch in the side here as it goes through the files. It opens the file automatically, it sharpens it, downsamples it, save, close, and repeats. Now we're on E2, save, close. I have 64-bit, it goes pretty quick, which is nice. E3, etc., etc. And so just to show you, when we look in our output, we do have TIFFs and JPEGs showing up one after the other. So that's how you start an action and run a batch in Photoshop.